Hey, well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I do anticipate we'll have a couple more people trickling in as we get started. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Jenna Kay, and I'm a long-range land use planner for Clark County, where I work in the community planning department. And I've been serving as the project manager for the county's recent climate change planning project. And really, wanted to convene this meeting to provide a project update and discuss next steps based on where we are today with this project. Also wanted to note that I'm joined by my colleague, Amy Koski, who's the Built Environment Coordinator in Public Health, who is helping me with some logistical items in the background during today's meeting. So thank you, Amy. And my colleague, Harrison Houston, also on the project team with Amy and I, also joining today. So thank you again all for being here. As a reminder, this group is made up of county staff from multiple departments, as well as staff from partner agencies, from our city colleagues. Some of you work at state agencies, some of you work for fire districts or school districts or hospital systems, a pretty wide range of partners here in the community. And we really have been thinking about all of you as technical reviewers and who are experts in your field and have been an invaluable resource to us as we've done our climate change planning work so far. Some of you have provided information, answered questions, and many of you provided review and comments on draft policies late last year. So thank you all again for all of your help so far on this project. And also as a reminder, many of you may be involved in some way in the implementation of policies that do get adopted from this work as well. So moving forward, lots of work to do. So that everyone has a better sense of who is here today, if you can find the chat button at the bottom of your screen, it should open a chat window. If you don't mind just putting in the chat your name and the organization that you work for, that will help, I think, all of us on the call have a better sense of who is in the room today. Seeing names come in, so thank you all. Looks like we have a really good cross-section of folks here, so thank you. All right, so we'll keep adding and introducing yourself if you haven't already, but otherwise I'm gonna get going with my slides. All right, so I'm gonna start with a presentation and then there should be plenty of time for questions once I get through the slides that I have. So I want to just provide, as part of the project update, a reminder of what it is that we are working on with this climate project, provide an update on where we are in our project timeline, share back what we did with all of the feedback that you provided to us, and provide an overview of the proposed policies that will be moving forward into the county's adoption process. And I'm going to end the presentation portion just talking about next steps and where we go from here based on the various roles that you all play for the organizations that you work with. And then, like I said, there'll be plenty of time for questions. So moving into providing a project update. So I think many of you know this, but just as a recap, House Bill 1181 was a Washington state bill that was passed into law in 2023. And this bill added a climate change and resiliency goal to the state's Growth Management Act, and it requires Clark County to add a climate element to its comprehensive plan. And this element needs to address both resilience and greenhouse gas emissions reduction here in the county. And there's some other themes in this legislation, including addressing environmental justice, using best available science, and being consistent with the Washington Department of Commerce guidance that was developed to help local jurisdictions implement this new law. And Clark County has a mandatory due date to implement this bill by the end of this year. Just a little bit more detail. So for the resilience portion of the work, the county, needs to identify a list of goals and policies to be implemented over the next 20 years that will identify, protect, and enhance natural areas, identify, protect, and enhance community resiliency, and address natural hazards exacerbated by climate change. And all of these policies need to prioritize benefits for our most vulnerable community members. And for the greenhouse gas emissions reduction side of things, we similarly need to identify a list of goals and policies the county will implement over the next 20 years that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce vehicle miles traveled per capita, and prioritize reductions that benefit our most vulnerable community members. So just looking at a high-level timeline for this project, in phase 1, we started out by exploring climate impacts relevant to unincorporated Clark County. You may recall back in the spring of 2024, we solicited this group's input to help us consider the hazard impacts on various kinds of assets throughout the county. And then in phase 2, we worked with our community advisory group and Environmental Justice Coalition to develop a list of draft resilience policies to be analyzed further. Then we moved into phase 3, where we reviewed the results of the county's first greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and then worked with those two same advisory groups to develop a draft list of greenhouse gas emissions reduction policies to get some more analysis as well. And in phase 4, those draft policy lists were further vetted. We collected input through several avenues, including feedback from this group. And that phase was very iterative and lasted a while, but it ended with our community advisory group making a final recommendation to staff on policies to move forward to the Planning Commission and County Council through the local legislative adoption process. Because this new climate element work is part of the county's comprehensive plan periodic update, the adoption process for our climate element will be the same adoption process as the whole comprehensive plan update. I will note we are running a little bit behind schedule here in the county with our comp plan update. So that is likely going to be happening in 2026. All right, so that was a timeline, but just a little bit more on how we got to where we are today with the county's proposed climate element policy list. You may recall a meeting last summer where we reviewed basically the baseline information being used for this project. So that included climate hazard projections and impacts we are expecting here in the unincorporated county related to resilience, and then as well as our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which was sort of the core base information for that part of the work. So with those two items as our starting point for each sub-element, our consultants audited existing county plans for policies that might be relevant to these topics. Our Environmental Justice Coalition and county staff got to work conducting community engagement and collecting feedback from community members on these topics. And while that was happening, our community advisory group started brainstorming, how to address the issues we were trying to solve. And that's really how we got to a first draft list of policies from that group that we then shared back with our Environmental Justice Coalition to reflect on and add to. We then did several rounds of review and iteration. Our community advisory group did a lot of deliberation to move the draft policy lists further along. Our consultants were able to then do a pretty high-level analysis across multiple criteria of those draft policies to help us better understand which policies were scoring better in various ways or not as well in various ways. And that helped us prioritize policies to look at more closely. So once we got that draft policy list as far as we could, that is when staff, we sort of took that list and folded in feedback from some other places as well. So we reviewed all of the public feedback that county staff and our Environmental Justice Coalition had collected over the course of the year, and made some more revisions based on any gaps we were seeing or inconsistencies between the community feedback and what was on that draft policy list. we worked with our Environmental Justice Coalition to take that draft policy list and run each of those policies through an equity lens. And we made some revisions based on that process and the feedback that came out of that work. We collected feedback from all of you and considered that as well, and made some revisions based on the feedback provided by this group. And then technical consultants and us staff, we were really double checking that that draft policy list was meeting all the requirements of HB 1181, and we were looking at consistency with other components of the comprehensive plan as well, and making sure things were consistent. So with all of those additional revisions, the policy list went back to, it ended up with our community advisory group, who did a final round of review and deliberation using a consensus-based process. And they ended up recommending 32 goals and over 100 policies to move forward into the adoption process. So just a little bit more of a reminder about the feedback provided by this group. It has been a while. We asked you for this feedback, I think it was late last November into early December. So it's been quite a while, but you might remember receiving a spreadsheet and we were asking you to review some draft policies in there. Some of you reviewed the full list, which I think was over 100 policies at that time as well. And you gave us feedback on things like, did we identify the county's role correctly? Any major issues with the policy, other barriers you could see with the policy, opportunities, key stakeholders, known funding streams, or any additional notes you had on those draft policies. And then if you work for the county, we asked for some additional information, such as, what department would be the lead implementer, and other, feedback on capacity, technical expertise, and time to implement as well. So just wanted to trigger everyone's memory, because I know that was quite a while ago. So thank you for all of your feedback with that. We know it was a pretty quick turnaround too for that request. And it's a really helpful data set. Not only did it help us just better understand some of the key issues related to these policies, but it's also, it helped us highlight some of the challenges and opportunities that are going to come up as we move into implementation as well. So we plan to use this data set produced by this group more as we move into implementation. But it did also help inform the policy list. We did make some revisions based on the feedback that we received from all of you. Okay, so that was just a bit of memory lane, because it has been a while. So based on all of the input from you all and the other groups that we received input from, we now have a list of proposed policies. So this slide provides our at-a-glance look at the topics that are covered in the 32 proposed goals. So I will read through this in a moment. I know it can be a little bit hard to see. But one interesting thing that happened through our process was that we started with two separate policy lists, one for resilience and one greenhouse gas emissions reduction. But as we were, doing iterative revisions to it, we realized there was quite a bit of duplication on the policies listed in the two lists. So we ended up actually merging to create a single climate policy list. And, we identify goals and policies as either being resilience, greenhouse gas emissions reduction, or both on that single consolidated policy list. Okay, so we came up with 7 general categories to organize the proposed policies. And so I'll just sort of highlight the key topics that are covered by the 32 proposed goals. And then, of course, there's policies nested under each of these goals to support and help implement them. So we have a health and well-being category, where we have policies related to a just transition, advancing environmental justice, ensuring the most vulnerable communities don't bear disproportionate impacts, consultation with the Cowlitz Indian tribe, regional tribal governments, and culturally specific groups. You'll also find policies related to food economies, agriculture and landscaping, housing, air quality, and outdoor recreation. We have a green jobs category that has a goal and some policies on economic development and job generation. An ecological stewardship category that has policies related to trees, county plantings and green spaces, environmentally critical areas and open space, forestry, salmon, water resources, stormwater, and public education on environmental topics. We have a transportation and land use category with policies related to reducing vehicle miles traveled, county vehicles, electric vehicles, resilience of the transportation system, and resilient development. We have a building and energy category that has policies related to energy efficient buildings, clean, renewable, and diverse building energy options, emissions from county buildings and facilities, and green building and sustainable building practices. We have a waste management category with policies related to waste reduction, composting, and recycling, emissions from county purchases, and using less and supporting a maintenance, repair, and resale economy. And we have a county governance category with policies related to policy implementation and resilience of county operations. Okay, so that's the at a glance, all the sort of major topics covered in these proposed policies. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of what's in there. But I do have a slide that we'll share these out after the meeting that if you'd like to actually read the policy language, this slide is to link you to it. So I'll just explain what it is that's on this slide, but let you all look at the details on your own time if of interest. So this top document here called CAG recommendations, this is the recommended policies coming out of our community advisory group. It's probably the best document we have right now that has a consolidated list of all the policies in one place. Because after we had that recommendation, we've had to do some reorganization to fit the policies into the comprehensive plan. And so the policies are now actually spread out across a few different places. So that top document gives you probably the easiest way to look at what's being proposed. And but the other places that you'll find policies when we do have a proposed comp plan considered in the adoption process is we are creating a new climate chapter. So most of the policies live in there. And if you click on these links now, it'll take you to a policy table. So these are the proposed policies for that chapter. But we also place some of the policies in other chapters because topically they seem to fit better there. And so you'll also find climate policies in our land use element, housing element, rural and natural resource element, environment element, transportation element, capital facilities and utilities, and parks, recreation, and open space element. Excuse me. And in addition to seeing our community advisory group's recommendations in these chapters, we also did flag any existing policy that's already in these chapters that is helping support the climate element. So you'll actually see some additional policies noted as being a climate policy that were already there and seemed like it was already helping. So we flagged it as a climate policy as well. And so any policy in any of these chapters, at the end of the policy in brackets, you'll see GHG if it's helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions, RES if it's helping support resilience, or you'll see both of those listed if it's a policy supporting both. So the details are there if you want them. But I guess I will add, once we get to the adoption process, the full chapters that have background text and these policies will be what you'll see as the proposed documents for adoption. Okay, so I am almost done. I'm just going to shift into next steps and then I'm glad to take questions. So this is our project timeline again. So just as a reminder, we are anticipating adoption to take place near the middle of 2026. That's our current best estimate. And when we were thinking about what that means for this group, it kind of varies a little bit depending on the organization that you work for. So we just wanted to talk through that for each of you. So if you work for a state agency, we will be submitting to the Department of Commerce the 60-day notice of the county's comprehensive plan periodic update. So you'd likely see that in early 2026 come through. So we encourage you, if you work for a state agency, to review materials once they've been submitted to Commerce, and then submit any comments to the Planning Commission and/or County Council during the adoption process, or to testify during the hearings. And once the County Council does adopt a climate element, as we shift into implementation, if you work for a state agency, we are really viewing you as as technical, using you as for technical guidance as needed as we move into implementation. Excuse me. But also, there are certain policies where we really may be interested in partnering on applicable policies where perhaps just the county can't be successful doing it alone, and we do need to partner with a state agency to be successful. So that's what we are looking forward to with all of you as we shift into implementation. For lack of a better term, I've put a lot of you working for organizations that we're just calling partner agencies. So this would be if you don't work for a state agency and you don't work for the county department. I'm thinking of you in this partner agency category. If you're in this category, we would encourage you, if you are interested to submit comments to the Planning Commission and/or County Council during the adoption process. The best way to get notified when the hearings and comments are being accepted for the adoption process is to sign up for notifications on the county's webpage for the comp plan. So I think Amy just put the link in the chat, but the link's also in the slides too. So if you don't get updates from community planning on comp plan items, we would recommend that you sign up if that's something of interest to you. So encourage you to participate in the adoption process if it's of interest. And then otherwise, once we do shift into implementation, we are looking forward to partnering with you on applicable policies. I think we want to acknowledge everyone's really busy, but partner where it really makes sense to partner, where there's overlap and mutual interest on various policies, to reach out and connect and work on those together in the future. And then if you are on this call and you work for a county department, we are planning to, in the near future, we are interested in organizing some internal meetings to start talking about and preparing for implementation, and trying to figure out a county internal organization and what that needs to look like in order to successfully be able to implement this climate element and this new state mandate. And so we envision, implementation for those of us at the county, that there's some kind of coordinated approach across departments, but there are a lot of details to figure out how and what that looks like. So we would like to start those conversations soon, so that once the County Council does adopt a climate element, we are in a better position to begin implementation. Okay, I think this is my last slide. So just double check. Yes, so that was my last slide. And I'm gonna pause there. I'll just add, so we don't plan to convene another meeting of this full group again, but instead we'll transition into the next steps outlined on this slide. So, we look forward to intersecting with each of you in the future, either through the adoption process and/or once we get to implementation, collaborating as makes sense when we get there. So I am going to stop talking, and maybe I'll stop sharing my screen for now, but I can pull it back up if helpful. And if you have any questions, we are glad to try to answer them. So you can either raise your virtual hand and I can call on you, or feel free to just unmute and jump in as well in case I don't see you or you can't find the hand. Oh, and do see, I'm looking at the chat now. So there is a question on if any other meetings are planned with the Planning Commission or Council prior to adoption. So good question. So we have this over the summer, we have done an initial briefing to both the Planning Commission and the County Council on these proposed climate element policies. So we've had work sessions with them on that. So that's been the initial briefing. We will, leading up to adoption, do a quick refresher with the council on the policies being proposed. But we've basically done our primary briefing with them so far. So we are in a little bit of a lull now while some other comp plan pieces are being worked on. But then as we get closer to the hearings, which will be probably in the spring of next year, we will do some refreshers with Planning Commission and County Council. So leading up to that. So hopefully that answers that question. I will also add all the Planning Commission and Council work sessions we have had on this. They are recorded and posted on the county website if you're curious. And if you have any trouble finding them, please feel free to reach out to me. Glad to point you to where you can find them. Okay. Not seeing any questions. I'll wait for like one more minute.
Hi, this is Barney Boardman. Can you hear me okay? I'm dialing into the call, unfortunately, instead of being online as I'm in transit.
Yeah, hi Marnie. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Oh, thanks. And pardon me for just lurking with the phone number for so long. Great presentation and congratulations. What just a thorough and comprehensively thought out climate element to the comp plan. It's just really impressive to see what you all in Clark County have done. So the first thing I just wanted to say was congratulations. And the question I have is related to some of the heat work that has been going on as Clark County, which I imagine some of the action. I guess maybe one minor question is, would you mind touching on how some of this, any particulars or high level points on how the heat watch work has informed some of the measures in the plan? And the bigger picture question is, the state climate resilience strategy that came out a year ago, a progress report on that work will be coming out soon. And there are some actions in the state resilience strategy related to supporting more interagency coordination, between sectors, emergency management, health, commerce, ecology, multiple agencies at the state level is part of the hope with part of the aims and one of the strategies and actions in the state climate resilience strategy plan. And my question for you is, do you see opportunities and ways that state partners can help support more county level interagency coordination around extreme heat resilience and heat mitigation, heat resilience, and heat response? So it's kind of a big picture question, but just trying to think about the linkages between that state climate resilience strategy and some of the measures and actions you have in heat for heat in the comp plan in Clark.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Marnie. I jotted down those questions as you mentioned them, so I'll take them one at a time. So yeah, the county's public health team did lead a heat watch campaign in the summer of 2024. So we now have a lot more granular heat data than we've ever had before in the county. I do believe some of the folks on this call who work for public health are most familiar with that new data set. And our public health team has actually formed a new climate action team as well, as they are getting organized internally. And I think some of those folks are on this call too. That heat watch and the granular heat data, we were collecting that in the middle of, also working on drafting, making the first draft of resilience policies. And I think where we landed is our comprehensive plan policies are fairly high level, guiding policies. So they don't go into a lot of specifics, but what we do have are policies that talk about, coming up with approaches to and a methodology to basically understand the data and implement strategies to address it. So that would apply to heat, but it would also apply to other hazards too. So our policies are written higher level, but we're hoping provide a direction and framework for the implementation that's to come. So really see that heat data coming into play as we move into implementation. And I think our public health team may already be doing some other things with it already. So that's one example of sort of how the heat watch information came up. But, we do have policies that will mention, that do speak specifically to like the urban heat island effect and things like that. So we do call that out in a few different places in our policies, such as some of our tree policies will also mention heat in them too. So then moving into your question around the state being interested in maybe providing interagency coordination, I would say, okay, I'm just gonna, without talking to my colleagues in public health here, I would guess that there is interest. I think as just generally speaking, as I've been working with all these folks to come up with, what's being proposed to our council for the climate element, it's very clear that we are going to need all the help and resources we can in order to be able to implement these policies. So if there's potential for state agencies to play a role in that, I'm guessing it would be welcome. So that's my initial off the cuff response, but of course, more conversation to be had. And I'd want to consult my public health colleagues too, if they have any thoughts on that. So thank you so much for the questions.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
very much.
Okay, I see another question in the chat on has there been any overlap with local jurisdictions that are also doing similar climate work for their comp plans? So thank you for that question, Francisco. So yes, there has been some coordination and collaboration with the other cities in the county. So so as some of you may know, City of Vancouver developed a climate action framework a handful of years ago. So they were a bit further along in their climate planning than the rest of the jurisdictions in the county. But the county and then the smaller cities, we did set up an interlocal agreement to share technical consultants who helped us. So we had technical consultants and used the same methodology to help us with all of like the baseline data and information. So those of us who need to do greenhouse gas inventories, that was all done by the same consultant. And for the resilience work, we had the same consultant helping us look at the hazards and impacts for each of our jurisdictions. So we collaborated with that, which was super helpful. And then we also have been working with the cities as we do comprehensive planning. We do regularly meet with all the jurisdictions because we are trying to stay coordinated and collaborating through that work. And so we do also have some county-wide planning policies that are being proposed that really highlight sort of some of the ways we would like to coordinate and collaborate moving forward. So you'll see that in some policies as well. But I will say, yeah, same request, lots of work happening in parallel. Every jurisdiction did do their own policy development work. So you'll see some similarities across jurisdictions, and then some differences as well across the different climate elements and proposed policies. So thank you for that question. And we'll just see if there's anyone else, any questions at this time? Right, I am not seeing any. I want to thank you all again for hopping on this call and helping us throughout our work so far. And we look forward to moving into the next phase of the adoption process, and then eventually we'll get to implementation. So thank you again for all of your help so far. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will send a copy of the slides out in the next couple of days in case you want access to them. So thank you again. Thanks so much.